Hello friends and gamers, and welcome back to the Fortress and video number 5 out of a series for the JX36 Overhaul, which is a system of house rules for Global War 1936 version 2. So it's not an expansion, not by any means. It's something completely independent I made back in 2017, ways away ago, before any association I had with historical board gaming, and just back in the bachelor years when I was trying to make fantastic and fun game. Alright, so let us go and tackle the next thing. So let me do a quick review here. The first page was about Great Britain, about its internal conditions, basically. The allies, or the alliances that it has, the treaties it has in place. Non-aggression, independence, alliance. How to make some different treaties through events. These are basically events. How to declare war on nations, and Lend-Lease, and how to send Lend-Lease, how to ship Lend-Lease, how to receive Lend-Lease, and who and what you can send Lend-Lease to. That's in video 1. In video 2 I covered basically turn phases. This is dynamic air war that we still need to cover. And there's victory points here. Some of them are a little bit different. So for instance, the Italians can join the Allies or the Communists under certain conditions, and if a civil war sparks off. And this is one way of that occurring. You change victory points depending on which side there is. Now we go over house rules here as well. Delayed deployment of production. This is something to try to speed up the gameplay by you delay your deployment by 1 turn. So you purchase on 1 turn and you get them the next turn. Hopefully that way it would streamline the game a little bit and people don't think as much about what they'll do right now and do a little bit later on. Ship-based hopping rule is so that you can changes Lend-Lease a little bit, that you can Lend-Lease and Lend-Lease would flow around along, it doesn't say it on here, but convoy lines. But this, I guess, is specifically about my version of strategic naval moving, where you can move things, but they have to connect every 5th sea zone to a naval port. And you can still, within the course of 4 months, still get across the world. And as a perspective, I think the Titanic was meant to cross the Atlantic in, 2 weeks? You should be able to get your Lend-Lease in under 6 months, from Canada all the way to Sydney if you so choose to do so. Contested territories changes things up because there's maximum combat rounds, so it describes what would happen with contested territories. Army and Navy units begins to kind of reconstruct how aircraft work, and saying that aircraft can only be engaged by 2 land units who are bombing them back or attacking them back under anti-aircraft values. So aircraft won't be engaged by the entire front, rather just 2. Peacetime naval intent kind of gets around some gamey features that could occur in the peacetime. So you have to have business wherever you want to go. You can't go wandering off the globe. Withdrawing and surrendering changes things a little bit by making it that the war is more dynamic. It's not all or nothing. So if you're defensively engaged by an aggressor, you can still be able to retreat your naval forces. You don't have to fight it to the bitter end. I think it was withdrawal is a tactic as well. And I don't like being railroaded into my tactics options limited. I think there should be this option to retreat. Partisans, uprising, and civil war describe how you can spark civil wars in other nations, not just Spain, but Argentina, Italy, whoever else you want to, and kind of structures a rule for that. It also talks about uprising, so if you are capturing a territory, you still have to keep hold of it by parking some units over top of it, basically. And dynamic supply talks about limitations on movement for ships, and if you're encircled and that kind of thing. Lastly, over here we have commanders, and that's fairly brief. There's not too much to talk about that. Down here we have turn order, basically how you restructure the turn order, and break away from the Axis and Allies kind of traditional way of doing things, and try to do something different and judge it on its own merits of efficiency, right? So 1936 start and the most efficient forms of turn order. Here we have some more stuff going on. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting. Oil wars, ignore all this. But this is a peacetime and wartime income stuff. So you have peacetime income increases, one-time events that do certain things, peace and war bonuses, because there's certain things that should be rewarded in peace as well as war. Here we have wartime bonuses that you would get as well. So these ones some of them are aggressive, some of them are passive kind of thing. Some of them are like this, the foreign trade markets where you can blockade neutral nations in Europe and suffer a penalty of your own. But it also makes the Germans suffer equivalent penalty. If you have Denmark blockaded, then Germany would also suffer as well as you. So you could deny somebody income. Here we have a few other odds and ends. unit experience gain, and special rules for national special rules, let's call it, for different units and such. Okay, here we talked about facilities, bases, right? Nuclear stuff, resources, about import, you can put your stuff in port here, your naval fleets in port. Same with submarine pens. You could have your subs hiding out in the territories adjacent to submarine pens and get some bonuses from that. Trace move path, that's kind of important as well, just a way of moving stuff around and kind of a little bit of a reminder. There is rail work, fortifications, all the different kinds of fortifications a person can do. Defensive work, so sea mines, trench work, rocket bases, fortifications and how they function, and land and sea mines, and basically how they function that you could target at this time, or you can do this time, but they could be swept up and that kind of thing. And that brings us to page 5, where we start delving into the different classes of units here. So here we have some features I should cover again. This is anti-aircraft values. This is values of attack, but with artillery support. I don't list this on here, but I think, well, yeah, this is, maybe I should simply have put +1. That would be probably better, because then it could attack, then it could be in defense and attack as well. Because perhaps artillery should support in defense as well. So if I was to redo this, I'd do just simply +1, and that would be applied to both attack and defense. I think that makes sense, because why does the attacking force get infantry get artillery support, but why not defensive force? And you'll see when I get to artillery, it doesn't make them too overpowered. Movement and cost. Okay, let's dive into the actual units. So militia. Now in version 2 Global Warrior 36, militia could not move, and that's what I carried over to here. My current belief is in version 3, militia are overpowered. And I remember when we played version 2, I always brought my militia tokens with me. I always brought my own set. Doesn't matter if I'm playing with another person's table. I brought my own militia set because I used a lot of militia. Now they've increased militia's capabilities and made them have a movement of 1. And now everybody's running out. Everybody's running out. Massive orders of militia probably going to HPG because militia are just so, well, in my opinion, a bit overpowered at this point. Okay, the reason why they're overpowered, well, let's see if I have a better drawing place. So if you have a tank is worth 4 militia, right? So say if you have 3 tanks. Now, you're going to have a step ladder like this, right? That basically means you have 3 hits. And for every hit you have, you're going to be knocked down by 6, right? Now, if equivalently you had the same amount, you have the same amount of money, but you spend it all on militia. And I know militia can't operate out of their homeland territory. You have the same amount of militia. Sorry. Tanks cost $6 and roll at 6. Infantry cost $1 and defend at 2. Okay, so it works on defense, but not so much as attack. But if you have militia defending, they each cost, you could get 3. So let's see if I could do this nicely. No, I think I can't. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so for each militia, you're going to be having steps like this. Just small little steps. I don't know if it's going to work out, but you get the idea. You have the same combat power for the same amount. The difference is you could take 3 casualties down. So it's nice to have that cannon fodder. So the difference is 3 hits will only take you down to this step, whereas 3 hits on a tank will take you down to this step. And the fact that now militia can move makes them quite a bit powerful. So sure, you won't get as much militia, but you're still looking at a step ladder like this. Something like that. You get the picture behind it. It would be tiny little steps. I'm not going to draw that out. But that's why militia are overpowered. Anyways, that's a side tangent. Okay, militia against aircraft, 1 against with artillery, 2 against land, 1 attack, and defensively at 2. Now, I don't have them have any movement value. Why do I have them at a 1? That's partially to allow if people have special rules or house rules to incorporate into it. For instance, I believe the Russian build chart has that they can move within their homeland territory, because this is based off of version 2. And so therefore this would become handy for them to know, to have it on their build chart. Okay, so you can upgrade militia to infantry, you can build without a factory. Annexed territory may contain a maximum of 1 unit of militia in every territory. I think it's ridiculous that you can capture territory and at the end of the game have a stack of, say, 10 militia on there. Like, where are you going to scrape together that much support for your militia? So annexed territory has a hard cap of 1. I think that makes the most sense. Now, if it's your own territory, you can build as many as you want. The fact that they don't move will really hinder you, but you can build as many as you want. But there's a max cap of 1 can go into captured territory. Partisans are the more interesting one. Now, they are not good for attack. They're 0 attack, they're 1 defense, so they're pretty weak. They still cost 2, though, so that you may think that's a bit weird, and it is. Alright, so you build, but the fact is they're still cannon fodder. You can still take them as cannon fodder. So you don't want to make him too powerful, because as cannon fodder, then you could just be like, okay, well, I'm gonna... Anyways, let's go on. You can build them in a foreign territory. So partisans are good in that regard. So Britain could support partisans in France, so that's quite nice. That assists the French a little bit, and of course, since French could take the partisans as casualties, it kind of works out. It's a somewhat a form of Lend-Lease. Generate at a 1d12 at 2. Now, we need to talk about that later on, but basically with uprisings and stuff, you could generate partisans in a certain area for free. The problem with that is you don't want to dice roll for every single territory. You get so bogged down in dice rolls across Europe and everywhere else. So perhaps the solution is roll by nation. So you could do 1 roll for France, occupied France. 1 roll for occupied, say Ukraine. You break Russia up into smaller little, not areas necessarily, but you have like a dotted line or markers on the map showing kind of Ukraine, Belarus, and that kind of thing, right? And you do it per territory that way, and that way there's less die rolls. Sure, some turns you'd succeed, some turns you wouldn't, but when you do succeed, it's going to be a massive success. Perhaps there's other ways of doing this as well, but let's just leave it at that. We'll go over their abilities momentarily, but let's move on. Infantry is pretty standard. They can upgrade to motorized, and they minesweep by 1d12 at 6. Colonial infantry are standard to the game as well. Basically, they're infantry. You just get to build them without a factory in British colony. So I should state here that its territory is held at the start of the turn, but I do believe it's written here. In Lanzo with Point Valley in the British colonies, starting territories that are not part of the national homeland. So you can't build them in London, let's say. That's taking it too far. Alright, next up we have the Airborne. So Airborne costs 3. That's what it is in this game. They attack 2, defend at 2. They have so you'll see over here, most of your infantry, because they represent larger bodies of troops, they defend against air at 2. Most of them, most of your infantry class, the exception being militia. And I suspect perhaps I should have done militia as well as anti-aircraft value for simplicity. Okay, so once you get this tech, once you get like Elite Specialist Doctrine, you can upgrade that to a 3 on 3 and 4/4 as bonus. A build limit of 2 per turn, so that's also a factor. Mountaineers, they have a +2 defense and no attack penalty in mountains, pretty standard. They also have minesweeping abilities. All infantry type have a minesweeper. And Marines are similar, no double casualties when amphibiously assaulting, and +1 defense on islands. So that's their ability, just because they know the terrain, they know how oceans work, they know the tides, that kind of thing. They have some sort of, they're prepared for this kind of stuff. Alright, no river crossing penalty, etc. Okay, now we have opened up this stuff here. Let's talk about it. So the abilities partisans have is Guerrilla, Impact, Fade, and Merge. So Guerrilla, Impact, Fade, and Merge. Partisans, unless suppressed by 2 ground units, partisans are generated in all annexed territories or built in annexed or neutral territories. So Britain can build them in somewhere else, right, into some other territory. On all islands, coasts, or any territory adjacent to purchasing nation. So that means partisans, you can use them to spark off revolutions, and that's dealt with in the house rules above. But these ones here, these partisans, you can actually assist the French, the occupied French, in building them in France, right? Of course, you can't do it all times. If that territory is suppressed, then you can't build it. But for the most part, you might be able to build a few units here, there, everywhere in France, and just tie up a lot of German forces if need be. Or not a lot, because realistically, the defense that they do is a 2. But the thing is, partisans can be runaway train on a person, right? So that's the idea there. Guerrilla, only be attacked by cavalry or infantry class. So though two ground units can suppress, 2 tanks can suppress, the partisans will survive and stay there until they're wiped out by cavalry and infantry class. Not artillery, as far as I can gather, just cavalry. Or actually, artillery could probably boost up the infantry, but they can't actually attack. It's only the cavalry and infantry that can attack them. Impact. Blocks strategic rail move through territory. Prevents supply if no cavalry or infantry class units are present. cannot capture or contest territory. So the partisans themselves cannot capture or contest a territory. You just simply can't. They don't have enough forces for that. In lieu of a combat roll, they can conclude combat. So that means that that the enemy, Germans let's say, they have a roll here of cavalry and infantry. They come in there and they can roll and they have one shot at it. In lieu of defense, the partisan could basically submerge like a sub. It could fade into the bushes. Now this might need to be tweaked. Perhaps partisans should have a movement value of 1. I think that would be probably handy so they can kind of move around a little bit. 2 partisans may merge into 1 militia. So that's also another feature. Now militia don't move, but their combat value is higher. So what you might want to do is you might want to have, say if you have 4 partisans in an area, you might want to only merge 1 together into a militia, because then you could use the other 2 partisans as combat fodder, cannon fodder in that fight. It does work to do that. It would work to do that and to spark off a revolution there. And you could also upgrade that militia into infantry at that point, right? It would cost a supply token, so $1 would let you upgrade that militia to an infantry. So it could really steamroll and get things moving pretty quickly. You start off with 1 partisan. Next turn, somebody else might lend them another partisan unit, into there. Now you have 2, and now you can merge them together, and they become a militia, and things can rapidly get out of hand there for the annexing power. I don't have time to deal with the full ins and outs of this, but we'll just leave it at that. Commando. You unlock this unit with Elite Specialist, and once you get that tech, then you automatically get a 3 here. Now one thing that just occurs to me is if you unlock this unit with Elite Specialist, you're already going to be going at a 3. So maybe that's something worth pointing out. But perhaps you start the game with a commando, and though you might start off with 1 commando, but you can't actually build another one until you unlock this tech. That's why it says 2 and 3. Likewise here, the Royal Marines, you can produce them once you get this Elite Specialist Doctrine, but you might already have a Marine on the board, and then that increase would bump you up here. So what does the commando do? He has Airborne, Marine, Mountain abilities, so he has all these abilities here. He could Airborne Assault. He could +2 defense and no attack penalty in mountains. No double casualties. He's a commando, he's a guerrilla, he fades, and he has impact. So the only thing he can't do, so with impact, he can't capture or contest a territory with impact, right? With fade, in lieu of a combat roll, they can disappear, basically, fade into the background. And with guerrilla, they can only be attacked by cavalry and infantry class. Now, I've talked about them before in video number, 3. So they do have some abilities there. The biggest one for them, it's not written here. I probably should have written it here, but they could do 1d6 of damage against targets. But that's probably written here. Yeah, 1d6 of sabotage. Okay, let's talk about that now. Another ability they have is commandos. They have built-in sea and air move. So that means they can move by sea and also move by air. So they encompass both factors there. They can utilize bases for their movement bonus, can cross impassable terrain, because they represent stuff like the long-range desert patrol or group, long-range desert group, and the special boat service and the special air service. So they encompass everything. Cannot be intercepted. Cannot be attacked whatsoever while moving. Even if the enemy has radar and scramble and whatever else, they still can't be intercepted. They can sabotage as a 1d6, but are caught and prisoner of W at a roll of 6. So they would be flipped out. They would be exchanged for basically a captured equipment token. And once the enemy gets that captured equipment token to a factor they're choosing, they can exchange that captured equipment for 1 IPV. So very minimal, but nonetheless, that's what it is. So the way that works is you want high enough damage, but you don't want to go all the way up to 6, because then you do the damage of 6, but you also lose your commando. That's the idea there. Royal Marines are pretty similar, but they also negate land malice for coastal gun for 3 units. So as we saw, the coastal gun up here gives a -1 malice for attacking units on round 1. Well, yeah, so this would negate that for 3 units. And I'm assuming one of them being this one, the Royal Marine. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It could be 2 other units as well. Okay, what else? The commander is written about on page 3, or sorry, page 2, so we're not going to deal with it here. Commander has its own bunch of different things. So that takes care of all the land infantry class units. Now we move on to the artillery. Okay, before we dig into the artillery, let's read about this artillery bombardment, which is represented by this token here. Artillery may perform first strike in a pre-combat round. Casualties are then removed. Artillery may be chosen at this point before round 1 begins, after which artillery supports only. Artillery only supports after round 1. Because it's built into the infantry, getting that +1 from artillery support, artillery should not have their own separate role. So artillery costs 3. Now on round 1, they get a dice roll at 3. So what I should say is here, anti-aircraft values. This is kind of strategic bombing, first strike, support, movement, and cost. So against air, they roll 1. The regular artillery don't do strategic damage. Combat value of 3, first strike basically. And after that, they don't fire, but they do support after that, 1-to-1 ratio. They move 1 and they cost 3, so a little bit on an expensive unit. They get much more value after you research this green tech here, the advanced artillery, where they support 2 infantry for every 2 infantry types for every artillery you have out there. And of course, they still get this little bonus. So in Global War 36, an artillery costs 4, and they get to fire every round at 3. In this one, they cost 3, they fire 3, and they get to support 1 unit each round, and after that 2. So they're still a really quite good unit to have. You just can't do much with them after that, after the first round. And now, like I said before, perhaps attacker and defender should also benefit from artillery, because why not? Why not? Perhaps, yeah, anyways, let's leave it at that. But that would be one of the benefits behind them, because they can be considered probably better in defense than offense. So perhaps they should have more impact on boosting up units on defense. Okay, so there's two techs that impact this branch, advanced mechanized and advanced artillery. Next level up, we have heavy artillery. Now this has been around from, eons ago, so they exist 1D at 3. So what does that mean? That's a bit complex. Who has a dice 3? Well, there's a few people out there. There's different ways of doing it. Use a dice 6 and divide every number by 2, right? If you roll a 6, it's a 3. If you roll a 3, 4, it's a 3, and it's what would it be? A 2, and a 1, 2 is a 1 damage, right? Just so it's not too powerful, because there's only so much you can hit. I do believe, if memory serves, the English Channel is about 30 kilometers across, and some German artillery could fire, I believe it was up to 40 kilometers away, but very inaccurately, and at that point you're not doing much damage. But this is an option of what you can do. Alright, strategic bomb adjacent area for 1 round. Artillery bombardment only, chosen last in combat. That's another feature behind this, because I don't want them to be too overpowered. Artillery should not be taken as casualties. They're in the rear ranks. They're way back there. Your stuff in the front are your infantry and that type. By being chosen last in combat, that I think represents historical accuracy, right? They're way back there. They should be able to fire. Now, of course, when you withdraw from combat as an attacker or defender, with the attacker, it's a different story. But anyways, as the defender, you would be rolling 11 and 12. So there's a chance that you could be captured. Your artillery would be bogged behind and be captured. But everything else is chosen last in combat. I think this makes sense. Artillery was the rear rank, the rear, whatever you want to call it. They're fighting from the back. They shouldn't be taking casualties. It's too gamey for them to be taken as casualties, in my opinion. I mean, it could be gamey, not necessarily. At the price they are here, they could be gamey, if they were taken as casualties. Heavy artillery, yeah, that's basically it. Self-propelled artillery is unlocked once you get advanced artillery. And again, they would get, after advanced mechanized, and they could boost 2 infantry. And they're pretty similar to what we had for regular artillery. The difference is they move 2 and have cost 4. They can blitz with armor and vehicle class. They're classified as a fast unit. And the reason I put fast here with some of the future stuff here is so that when it comes to the defender withdrawing, perhaps the fast units could still fire at their full combat value. Now, I didn't incorporate that, but I had these identified as fast just for that purpose. Okay, that takes care of that. I made a separate category called line support. Now, line support is somewhat similar. The only difference here is this is against aircraft. That's the idea there. So the anti-air gun, line support. Now, other people who are probably more familiar history might get me with this one. But artillery was not direct fire, and direct fire units were anti-aircraft guns, anti-tank gun, where you had a line of sight where you just shot at them. So that's the idea there. Now, I could be wrong with this, but here we go. Against aircraft, you'd be rolling at 3. So fire at any enemy aircraft entering the territory. So if enemy aircraft enters your territory, 3 dice at 3. Now on the, what's the rest? Every other round after that, you get to fire just 1 dice roll at 3. Every other round, why not? You know, if this is supposed to represent 4 months, then your anti-aircraft guns aren't going to just fire once in that course of the first months. They're going to be able to fire. It's not at huge rates. It's 1 dice. Aircraft are much, much cheaper in this game too. So keep that in mind. So don't be all outraged here. A fighter in Axis and Allies or Global War 36 costs $10. Axis and Allies too, I believe, for that matter. Which I think is quite a bit overpriced and really octogenarian. It harkens back to classic Axis and Allies way back when, and I think it's a dinosaur and needs to evolve to something better. So in my version of this game, JX36 aircraft cost, I believe for a fighter it costs $6. So you already have a knockdown price for them. That makes it much more doable to have anti-aircraft firing every round. That's the idea there. So the only first strike versus armor and vehicle class. What do you say? Well, available once you get advanced artillery, your anti-aircraft could actually fire at ground units too. First strike versus armor and vehicle class, only on 1 round, and you can't do everything. You can't do, I'm assuming you can't do both this and this. I have to state that there too. Probably would have showed up in any FAQ. You can't do both this and this. You have to choose one or the other if it ever came to that. Now, it would likely be this one. Okay. Anti-tank gun. It's another unit, so it would normally roll 1 against aircraft. So you see everything is 1 unless it's infantry class or militia. You have 1, attacking at 1, defending at 1. Pretty small, right? Attack value, cost at 3, move 1. Once you get it, you can upgrade that to 2. They target at 1 and 2, which means that every shot that they make, they're gonna get a target selection on them. Now, in defending in city, they would also get. Oh yeah, sorry. You would get this 2 only when you're defending in the city. So that's the thing. +2 first strike versus armor and vehicle class. That means on the first round of combat, your anti-tank gun is going to be rolling a 3. 3 attack, 3 defense, cost 3. And in the city, it's going to be rolling a 5. Sorry, a 4. A 4 in defense. Of a city. So that's pretty handy, right? You, for a price of 3, you could target some armor and vehicle class. Now you target, and I think you simply have to, well anyways, I can't remember how target works specifically. You could choose which unit. Yeah, and I think that's about it. Now ordnance is stated in the rules of Ordnance 3, so that's going to be HBG's Ordnance 3. So this is again an overlay on top of Global War 1936, like a sheet with holes cut out, and certain things poke through from Global War 36 version 2. So when it comes to their expansions on ordnance, so this is what it's going to be. You could arm your stuff with, what's this, radioactive, biological, and chemical warfare, and also poison gas, and also flea bomb. Those are the different types of ordnance. And you could arm your artillery, heavy aircraft, or rockets with this kind of stuff as well. All right, moving on. Cavalry class is a unit on its own. Against aircraft, 2. So I guess that changes what I said before. Maybe it's the standard is 2, and it's the exception is that. Anyways, 2. Attack at 2, defend at 2, move 2, cost 3. Now in Global War 36, they attack at 3, and that makes cavalry very powerful. That makes cavalry equivalent to a medium tank in power. Just about, not quite. If you minus the blitz out of there, it makes it roughly the same. So if you look at that chart we said about tanks, right? So this means in offense, you actually are much, much more beneficial to get, 2 cavalry for every tank. That's way more beneficial. That way you could take 3 hits. You could take 3 hits and your tank force will be up, but 3 hits on your cavalry will still leave you, I must have done this wrong, still leave you up here, with a good chance of hitting. With at least 1.5 chance of hitting, right? Of getting a hit. So cavalry is way too overpowered in version 3. This levels that table out a little bit at only a cost of 2. Well, it's not much better than other stuff. Of course, we do flip it around a little bit and give them a slight advantage and say, on the first ground attack on first round of combat, they get a +1. On a ground attack on the first round of combat, they get a +1. Kind of a charge, surprise charge, so that kind of balances the scale a little bit. Now, it's its own class. I'm half tempted to say limit of 2. Not because horses weren't present in World War II. They actually were, Germany was primarily a horse-drawn army in World War II. But still, I find cavalry can be very powerful. Cannon fodder that can move fast, right? It's for offensive actions, it's almost better to have cavalry and tanks, or cavalry and aircraft, basically, is all you really need for offensive actions. So I think limit of 2, or perhaps 4, but 2 I think is a nice solid number that would be easy to remember. I think that would be the trick. Okay, what else? Vehicle class. So again, we have the whole artillery support, so certain things get artillery support. 2 techs here impact things, advanced mechanized, and war industry. Yeah, war industry, there we have it. So, everything is defending at 2 here. Attack at 1, defend at 1, but they move 3, so that's the biggest feature behind them. That's why it's highlighted here in yellow. The yellow basically means that's the primary cool factor behind the stuff. You could build in a factory in British colonies, defense of 4, +2 defense in mountains. Like, this is what makes these things special, but it has no other significance behind that. Alright, so armor class, move at 3. So it's good. You can blitz with all 3 of those movements too, so if nothing's in the way, you could really exploit. And that idea there is in a 4 months time frame, or a 6 months time frame if you don't want to incorporate the 3 turns per year, your armored car divisions should be able, if they're unopposed, they should be able to get quite far. Of course, it wouldn't take much to stop them. Militia might be enough to wipe them out, but at the end of the day, still, movement of 3, you might want to have 1 cavalry present there just to push the advance a little bit and get that extra territory behind, kind of an exploitation unit, right? Keep in mind too that since we have limit of combat rounds, so you can't fight until victory at the end. If an enemy has, or if your opponent has 1 militia and you have 1 cavalry, and you're like, haha, I'm gonna exploit this, I'm gonna fight this out to the bitter end. Well, you might not get to the bitter end because there's only 5 rounds of combat. So the territory might just simply become contested, and that's it. It might not ever get any more than contested. And sure that your opponent will lose the income, but you're definitely not going to get the income either. Okay, motorized. Pretty standard, nothing too much to say here, except you can tow any resource or armory unit 1-to-1 in non-combat move. That means you can theoretically tow with your motorized. You can tow something like heavy artillery, anti-tank gun, even another infantry if you wanted to. Basically any army unit, even a tank theoretically, if you, for whatever reason, a heavy tank theoretically would work in this circumstance, just because you're helping them out with repair parts, whatever else, or just carrying them simply. So they do have some benefit. I find motorized weren't much used in Global War 36, and so the fact that you can tow anything makes them a little bit more handy. You could actually combine your motorized with your heavy tanks, let's say, and then that way everything can move too. Of course, just a non-combat move, so you're still going to be a little bit slower, but nonetheless, it still has its own little benefits. I haven't done much highlighting here. It's a non-combat move. Alright, maybe I'll go back here. So, quick look back here. No, let's just leave it at that. I'll highlight from here on onwards. Okay, next up, so we've dealt with motorized. I've talked about fast before. There we go. So, mechanized, probably the best unit by far in the whole game. It's unlocked with improved armor, so you need to get this improved armor tech to get mechanized. So there's actually 3 techs that impact mechanized. The first one to unlock it. The second one would make it advanced mechanized, which makes it the best unit by far in the game. That's because mechanized are kind of a late war unit, and with war industry it even decreases the cost. So absolutely the best unit in the game. Now you'd go attack at a 5 with artillery support. So if you combine, self-propelled artillery with this, you're doing some damage here. Of course, you're not getting this increase here. It's still going to be a 3. Unfortunately, I don't know why I put that in there, but your defense value just goes way up, to a 5. That's really good. That's because it's a late war unit. It's behind a tech here, but it's also behind a couple tech bars over here. So you're not going to really see them until fairly well the last 5 turns or whatever of the game, something like that. Okay, that takes care of those. And now we're down to here. I don't want to give too much away. Armor class. So here we have the same values: anti-air, and attacking, defending, blitz. Are they blitz capable? Move and move and cost. I just saw something here. With mobile warfare or industry, you could unlock better things, but there's other things too. At the beginning of the war, you'll only have light armor. Even blitz with them until you get this mobile warfare tech. I think that's good because you could theoretically blitz with light armor. I mean, it was done when the Germans invaded France with light armor. Absolutely should work. Medium armor, attack 6, defense at 5. I think in HPG's world they defend at 6 as well, which is a little bit too good for this unit. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but they defend at 5, so that's one key difference. They can blitz straight from the start of the game. This improved armor tech is pretty easy to get. Within 2 turns, 3 turns, a person gets it. Okay, heavy armor. You need another tech for this one. Theoretically, you could bypass improved armor and go straight to heavy armor. Of course, it's nice to have improved armor because then you could get mechanized as well. But you could do this if you wanted to. Attack at 8, defend at 6. Blitz capable after mobile warfare. Cost 8 after war industry. Target select at 1. Attack and defense. Cannot be targeted by any unit, including anti-tank guns. Only by aircraft. That's it. That's all that can target select them. So they have some defense for sure. Tank destroyers. You unlock that with heavy armor as well. 4 attack, 4 defense. Can blitz after mobile warfare. Cost 6 after war industry, and you can target select at 1 to 3. So that's pretty handy. That's almost their full, 75% of their complete thing. And +1 first strike versus armor and vehicle class. That means they're going to be 5 and 5. First strike too, so that's quite nice. You could take a chunk out of the enemy. So yeah, but of course you can't target the heavy armor. So heavy armor units, tank destroyer, heavy armor. I know they had tank destroyers earlier on, but these 2 units are supposed to be kind of late war game stuff. It's late stage. Mechanized, heavy armor, tank destroyer. I expect if this game ever went to 20, let's say, you'd have most of your units would be these units. They're just by far the best. And for the price that's given, they're really not that bad at all. And really would get the job done pretty handily. So that's the idea behind that. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Now, of course, things would need to be tweaked a little bit and changed, but overall, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's go into some of these rules. Blitz. Units may make an additional combat move if the initial attack lasts for 3 rounds or less, and units have sufficient movement. Fighters and tactic bombers with sufficient movement can also blitz with the blitzing army forces. Units cannot blitz into or out of mountain terrain or across a mountain border. So I didn't list the other terrain out there. As you see here, there's a few other terrain that I talk about, but that is it for now. Flanking. When attacked from multiple directions, defender allocates forces towards each attacked border. If defenders on border are destroyed, towards each attacked border. If defenders on border are destroyed, the flankers receive a +1 bonus to attack. Defender may redirect units only after victory on a flank. So that's fairly complex to say. Let's draw it out here. So you saw how before we talked about the defenses, right? If you had a gun here or something like that. So say if you have a few units to defend. You have 5 units, let's say. And the enemy is attacking with a few units of their own. 4 and 4, let's say. Now the defender has to choose how he wants to allocate his defenses. There's basically 2 combats occurring, but they're kind of going simultaneously. So, but you're rolling for them simultaneously, but they're technically 2 separate combats. Because you're attacking from 2 separate territories, it should be 2 separate combats. Okay, so this attack is going across here, right? It's attacking to there. So the defender has to allocate, after he sees what's going where, he has to allocate his defenses. So you might say, I'm putting 2 infantry here and 3 infantry here. So the attack goes through. You roll for everything, and say you do 2 hits. It was fairly equal, something like this, right? So you have 3, 3 versus 2 and 2. Now, say these guys. Okay, we'll talk about the attacker. So if the attacker wipes out 1 whole flank, then the remaining 3 units get a +1 bonus to attack. They'll be rolling, +1 because they're attacking these guys from the rear, there's basically stuff going on. And with the concept of withdraw, it might happen that the enemy withdraws before this point as well. But it makes more flanking maneuvers more doable. And one of the ways to kind of pin things down, you want to try to flank a person so that you can get them out of a tough position. If they're in a tough position, you might want to flank. And by flanking, you could also be flanked, and people could encircle you and that kind of thing as well. You know, on the strategic map, that kind of story. Now, that's what happens if the attacker is victorious on one flank. If the attacker fails on one flank, now these two can rejoin this combat, and now there's 4 against those 3. That kind of story behind there. Keep in mind, too, battles will last a little less lengthy battles as well. So that's another feature behind things. Because you have maximum combat rounds. Right here. Maximum combat rounds. Rounds are limited by train type, but can be extended or reduced by attached commanders, and reduced by weather and the season. So in this, you would have weather and seasons as well. So it'd be, say for simplicity, you only have 2 seasons, wet and dry, or 2 weather patterns, wet and dry. 2 seasons, muddy or wet and dry. Like, you simplify it that way. Say if it's wet weather or bad weather or good weather, you could simply say weather can be good or bad, and season can be wet or dry. Say there's 2 dry seasons and 1 wet season in a year. So, so if weather's good, you get 5 rounds. In open terrain, and the season's good, you get 5 rounds in open terrain. That means there's no terrain features, nothing. If the weather's bad, and the season is wet, you get -2. So your open terrain now only lasts 3 rounds of combat. In rough and forest terrain, that's going to be a lot of forest terrain is going to be in Russia. They had a dense amount of forest. Of course, it wasn't all, but a good chunk of it will be forested terrain. So you'll only have 4 rounds of combat. So that means if you're reduced by 2, now in the winter months, you only have 2 rounds of combat. You'll have a lot more contested territory, and especially if you have some Soviet commander there trying to reduce the amount of combat rounds that turn, you might even only have 1 round of combat in rough terrain in the wintertime in bad weather. You get the idea. In mountain, jungle, and city, it's going to be 3 rounds of combat. So you'll see cities really draw to a crawl. Battle of Stalingrad will really come down to a crawl. It'll be a rough fight. It will definitely be a rough fight. In Arctic and Tundra, well, 1 round of combat, because those places are not worth fighting over anyway. I just include it here for what it is, right? Siberia, Canada, they're not going to have anything, and no one's going to Antarctica anyway. But if people happen to want to, like if a person wants to, if there is some kind of built-in benefit of going to Antarctica for some reason, or into the Siberia, then yeah, for sure, perhaps that option is there. This is a little reminder here that armies may withdraw unless amphibious or surrounded, because then you won't have anywhere to withdraw to. But everything else here is pretty self-evident. So we've covered a few different things in this page about Blitz. Blitz is pretty standard, nothing too much else to say. Into and out of mountain terrain and border, so there should be other terrain mentioned there. Tank destroyers, their target selection is quite handy. Medium armor, etc. Armored cars, and the fact that they can do some serious blitzing with all sufficient moves. And the motorized can tow all resources, tow any resource or army unit. That's pretty handy. Mechanized become the best unit in the game. Cavalry have their own limitations. Should be a little bit limited further, but at least in that first round they're suffering that -1. So on the round where if there's any fortifications or anything, they have +1. But after that, everything is just a 2, so they're not much better than infantry at that point. Because realistically, what are cavalry but infantry on horses in World War II? That's realistically what it is. They can move fast, but they're infantry on horses. So at that stage, yeah, they should be fighting at the same rates that infantry is after that first round of combat. If their initial punch of their shock value decreases. What else? Anti-tank gun, yeah, talked a little bit about the bonuses, the first strike ability. We talked about the anti-tank gun, artillery, and the benefits of all of them. The fact that they could only fire on the first round, but after that, it's only support, and heavy artillery can support 4 units. So heavy artillery would be kind of good, even though you could support the same amount of units with two regular artillery and 1 heavy. It's still nice to have that extra punch on that first round, and especially if you're amphibiously assaulting, you might want heavy artillery present instead of 2 light artillery. Talked about commanders, Royal Marines Commandos, Marines Mountaineers Airborne, colonial infantry, partisans have been touched on, and partisans are a complex topic that would need basically their own video to talk about, but nonetheless, we'll leave it at that. Thank you all for watching. Cheers!